Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I am joined by Natasha Meikle and Jim Orr for the Friday Bulletin. Natasha, you are back. How was your Christmas and New Year?
I am back. It's been a couple of weeks since I've been on here, so pleased to be back. Pleased to join you guys. Looking forward to talking all things Celtic. But yeah, it was a lovely break. A busy one, but a very much enjoyable one.
Glad to hear that. And what about yourself, Jim? What's the pace like for Jim Orr at Christmas and the New Year these days?
When you're retired, Paul, every day's a holiday.
All right.
Festive season's the same thing. It's the same thing. Yeah, it's all very hectic all the time. If you're a busy person like myself, yeah, it's all very hectic. But it's good fun and with a few good games to watch over the festive period. So yeah, it's all good stuff.
We did. There's loads to talk about as well. On Christmas Day, the 12:30 show that went out on the channel was your good self and Des, the star of Bend It Like Bertie. Tell us a wee bit more. Get that plug in there now, Jim.
Oh, good stuff. Bend It Like Bertie on 5 weeks' time, 9th of February to the 11th of February, starring the fantastic Des McLean. I think there's only balcony tickets left for the 4 performances, so tickets going pretty quick. So the ideal Christmas present, even though Christmas is past, but something wants to give you money, so there's something to spend your money on. Go for it.
I like it. Well done. And obviously, if you want to watch the interviews with Jim and Des, check them out on the channel, on YouTube. Loads to talk about. We'll start off with that tagline. Natasha, Celtic must act on Ibrox safety fears of our fans, players and staff. When I was chatting to JP, we spoke about not just the latest Ibrox fixture, but last season when Joe Hart was faced with glass in the box. We had a staff member who had to get stitches in the back of the head because a missile was thrown at him. We've got that feeding into the ticket allocation. Does it make it worse for Celtic fans in terms of the toxic atmosphere? What has to be done and by whom, in your opinion, Natasha?
I think there's a duty of care on a number of organisations. I mean, let's be clear about it. Fan safety at football games is absolutely paramount. Player safety is paramount. Staff safety is paramount. And everyone has an obligation to make sure that that is protected. Firstly, I think you've got to look at the host club. They have a duty of care towards the people who come into their stadium, be that fans or players, to make sure that it's a safe experience. The police who are monitoring that game, the stewards, have a duty to make sure that people who enter that arena aren't in danger. That isn't happening. The club who are attending, not the host club, the other club, also then have to step up and assume some of the responsibility to make sure that their players, staff, fans are safe when they're ultimately either going out to do their job or going out to watch their team play football. But for me, so much of this has to come down to individual responsibility. If you are going to a football game and putting some sort of miniature glass bottle, whatever missile you're choosing to take, into a football stadium with the sole intention of hurting another person, there's something very, very wrong with you. And that doesn't matter what football team you support. There's something very, very wrong with you if you choose to do that. There are small glass bottles getting thrown into the Celtic section at Ibrox over at the weekend, and that is a section where there were children in. So if you think that in any society it's acceptable to do something like that, that says a lot about you. So there is that personal responsibility you have to take there to be a decent human being. And the people round about you have to call that out when you see it, when they see it, if they see it. So there is a whole collective responsibility from the clubs, from the police, from the individual fans that needs to be taken seriously if we're going to stamp this out, because this is a football game at the end of the day, and you have to feel safe going along to support your team. And I don't think that was the case at Ibrox.
Listen, you're right. It's a football game, and the way that football is now marketed is completely different from, let's say, 42 years ago when there was a massive riot at the Scottish Cup final, Jim, back in 1980, which resulted in the banning of alcohol, for example, from football stadiums. But things have changed so much since then, Jim, and clubs are trying to make it more of an event where you take your kids and it's a family day out and all this kind of stuff. But, you know, when you see people getting their heads split open with missiles being thrown from the opposition crowd, it's not going to help anyone in their pursuit of making this a family event, are they?
I think if I was a lawyer, I'd have given the exact same answers Natasha gave there. I'll be quite simple. Mine's is a nutter's a nutter, basically. I mean, people who take things to games with the intention of hurting people are just nutters, you know. And as Natasha said, it's individual people doing daft things, and that's always hard to legislate against. And although that you mentioned there about the image of the game, and it's all kind of, you're trying to sanitise things and whatever. I don't know if any of you have seen the Welcome to Wrexham docu-series. If you haven't,
No,
it's
I've not seen that
fantastic.
yet.
It's absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And it's Rob McElhenney, Ryan Reynolds, and it's all touchy-feely, and it's all really, really good. And Wrexham, and I've said in the past, when the Celtic saying things like we're a club like no other. Wrexham are a club like no other for lots of different reasons. Every club is a club like no other. But up to something like episode 9, it was all really kind of touchy-feely stuff. Isn't this great, this wee club? And episode 10 was the hooligans.
Right.
And it showed the Wrexham Intercity, what were they called? And it was a horrible episode, it was a nasty episode. So it's always there. And you can't legislate against that. And we're talking to some of the people who were involved in this. And one of them is going out with a cop, or with someone who was trying to be a cop but couldn't get in because her boyfriend was a nutter, basically. So but that was the episode. You think things brought back home to think, oh yeah, that's actually it's football we're dealing with now. It's not some glitzy Hollywood thing. It's football, and that's what you get at football. You get nutters, and you'll always get nutters. And how do you legislate for that? I've got no idea. But you take certain steps, and I think quite astonishing to find out there was a bunch of weapons stashed in Ibrox. Which is
I know.
Mind blowing, absolutely mind blowing. Mm-hmm. And to be fair, if you're them and that's your stadium, they'll be horrified by that as well. How did that get to happen? How did that get to happen? I've said before in the podcast, I thought the 3-0 game last season, best atmosphere ever. And part of the reason was there was no away fans. And I think that's the way forward for both sets. I think letting such a small amount of people get into the game, 700 and something. Were you there at the game?
I wasn't, Jim.
No.
I think Declan was the only Acsom.
Yeah, Declan was the only one.
Yeah, yep.
Because you're usually everywhere. So,
I know.
anyways,
issues.
You're usually everywhere. But that's such a small number, and the security around that is massive. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I wouldn't want to go to the game. I wouldn't want to be 700 Celtic fans going to Ibrox, or vice versa, if that happens. So I don't know why they're doing this. Either they give a kind of decent allocation or nothing. But even with a decent allocation, you're going to get nutters. You're always going to get nutters. And I don't know how you legislate. You can do everything in the world, but something in a crowd of 50,000 or 60,000, somebody will get a golf ball into the game or a glass bottle or something. And there's been a number of games at Celtic Park this season and last season where somebody's taken a corner for the other team and things have been chucked on the park. Maybe not a glass bottle, maybe not a golf ball, but a paper cup or something. And you might say, well, that's not as bad. It is as bad. People think it's okay to chuck things onto a football park. It's not okay. How you deal with that, I think it's really, really difficult. You take all the steps you possibly can, but nutters will be nutters, which is the kind of punchline to my story.
I remember, I think it was a couple of years ago now, I had Mickey Weir. Remember Mickey Weir, Jim?
Yes, Mickey Weir,
Hibs,
yeah.
tricky wee winger, came through the ranks with John Collins and Paul Kane, etc. And he was in here talking about his career, and he spoke about, now I'm not as au fait with the Edinburgh Derby as I am with Celtic and Rangers. He was talking about a particular part of the park where he had to take a corner, but it was Hearts fans who were there, and he's gone over and he says, you're expecting to come away covered in grogs and all this kind of stuff. He says, but just as I was lining up to take the corner, he felt this pain in his ankle, and when he looked down, there was a dart sticking out his foot. Somebody had actually thrown a dart. This is probably late 80s, early 90s maybe, and it had actually caught him on the ankle. So you ask yourself the question, as much as football's changing, Natasha, there's loads of things that stay the same and remain as archaic as it was back in the 1980s. But I am concerned, I've got to say, for the safety of our fans, the players, and obviously the staff as well. There was missiles thrown at Taylor when he was being looked at by the physio. Sorry, Jim.
No, I was going to say that it also affects young kids. I went to Ayr. I went down to Somerset Park about, whenever that was, 7-8 weeks ago, to watch Pollock play Ayr in the Cup. And it was really old school stuff. I mean, their stadium is horrendous. I mean, it's like, it hasn't changed since the 1970s, I would think. And if they come up, goodness knows where they're going to play. But notwithstanding that, so I'm in the Pollock end, and there's loads of kids who obviously must be the Pollock young team, or whoever they are, who all looked about 10, say, right. And one of these rituals I've got now is to take off one shoe, right, and wave a shoe, which is mental. But at some point, because you're not sitting down, there's about 30 or 40 of these kids. They took it upon themselves to then just wander round to stand beside the Ayr fans, which was on the halfway line, and chanting and pointing. And it looked daft, it looked really, really funny. But that's the mentality that this is what you do at a football match. You take your shoe off, firstly. Right? But then you march round and we confront the opposition. And there was quite a few policemen there, as you would tend to, because you go and watch Pollock, as I do now and again, there's no policemen there. Don't expect any trouble. But these are young kids who looked about 10, as I said, who think this is how you behave at a football match. You go and confront the opposition. You sing songs with there's swear words in them. And get back to the Wrexham thing. It's brilliant. You should watch it. There's a guy called Paul Mullen that they signed, not the Paul Mullen that played up here, a different guy called Paul Mullen. And the Paul Mullen song has got his expletive dynamite. We've got Super Paul Mullen, he's expletive dynamite. And outside the ground, it's all these young kids, and that's what they're singing. You know, so going to a game, you can swear as much as you want. Going to a game, you can taunt the opposition. Going to the game, you can sing songs about people who have died. That's what you do. That's what people do. And you will never stop that because nutters are nutters. And it's a terrible thing to happen. What do? You try your best. The clubs try their best, but that will never be stopped. It just never will be stopped. And that's a really sad thing. And that's because lots of people off football.
Yeah.
You know, we're ingrained in it and you think nothing of it. And there's a bizarre song which I'd never heard. And I'm like about 10 seats from The Boys because they've been moved this season and it's constant noise. And most of the songs are great and are funny and all that. But there's a few songs you're thinking, why are you singing this stuff? You know? And then if this happens, we hope you fall in a gate and we hope that the doctors are in strike and I hope your doctor's Harold Shipman. And just thinking, the amount of thought went into this song and it's just more horrible as it goes on. And you're thinking, why? Because there's so many good songs you can sing, so many good inventive, funny, we're top of the league looking down on the Rangers and
the glory in the dream
thing and the glory in the dream. Good plug there and the Celtic jersey. You know, there's so many good things you can, and what you should never be, I think, as a football fan, is anti something. You should be for your team because there's so many good songs to sing. You don't have to point and shout things against the referee that a referees are such and such. Who cares? You know, think about your own team, sing your own songs, and bit by bit that would be good. And Natasha said, you know, there needs to be a bit of, you know, onus on your own fans to do something, but nobody's going to do it. And you're going to take on a bunch of nutters singing songs because you don't know what you're going to let yourself in for. So you're not going to do that. So I think it's a difficult thing. You've got stewards. If I'm a steward getting paid minimum wage, am I going to wade into all these nutters, you know, singing songs? Who knows what's going to happen? So I think it's a really, really difficult thing. I think it's really sad in 2023 we're still talking about this. I think in terms of the specific game we're talking about, I think home fans only is the way forward. And I think that 3-0 game, I just thought the atmosphere was great. Obviously, we won the game, played really well under the lights, the disco lights, and all that all added to the atmosphere. But having no away fans at the games, I think if you ask most fans, I think they would say that's the way forward on both sides.
It was electric. I mean, I've never taken a shoe off at a football game, Natasha, have you?
I can't say I have. No, I can't say I have. I don't know.
You're old.
I don't know about the ticket thing, Jim. I think something like I'm thinking back to some of the great memories I've got of when we had the full broom loan at Ibrox and it was bouncing and we're scoring 5 goals and that's fantastic and obviously ultimately probably what led to us no longer having the full broom loan. But it's a difficult one because there are a lot of our fans who want to make sure that we are there to support our club regardless of what the allocation, if it's 2,000, 3,000, if it's 700, we want to be there. And the only way of ensuring that at least 700 of us are there to back our team in that environment at Ibrox is to give them the reciprocal amount at Celtic Park. I fully agree with you. I think that 3-0 game, the evening game, was probably one of the best atmospheres I ever remember. It was absolutely fantastic. But I think if it came down to it, I'd like to probably see the allocation increased to allow more of our fans go into Ibrox to support the team. Obviously, that does have the reciprocal obligation on our side. I think a lot of people have mentioned making it the European allocation, so not as full as it had been previously, but at least an increase on the 700. I think that's probably something to consider. I don't see it happening. I don't think the clubs are going to reach that agreement, but I think there are too many fans who want to make sure that we're there regardless of where it is to support the team, to give the allocation up entirely. And I totally appreciate, on the back of everything that's happened, the safety fears, everything like that, there's a really strong notion to tell them to stick their 700 tickets. But I think if it really came down to it, I would still be taking them to make sure that there's at least 700 of us there back in the team.
I'm going to ask you both a question about that.
Without butting in there again, I think tagline says safety, and as someone who stays in Glasgow, I think if you ask the police and you ask the health service, if it was home fans only, would that make a big difference? I think they would say unquestionably yes.
Yeah,
I think if it's about safety, then if you're saying that safety is the most important thing, home fans only. I think what you're touching on, obviously, is like it'd be much better for the atmosphere. Fans want to be there, want to support the team. Totally get all that stuff. Totally get that stuff. But if this is about safety and having less incidents, I think home fans only has to be.
Well, here's the thing then. I'm going to bring this comment up from Celtic follower first on YouTube. It's time for Celtic to end Ibrox fans' ticket allocation at home and refuse away allocations too for the safety of our fans. So that point's been raised and it's agreed by Celtic follower. I've got a question. I'll come to you first, Natasha. What do you think if given the option of having even 700 fans at the ground, Ange and the players would say?
Yes.
Do they want 700 fans there in that
absolutely.
Ibrox cauldron? What do you reckon, Jim?
I think he would want. I think yes is the obvious answer to that. But I think if it's talking about safety, if we're talking about safety, the answer is no fans. If you're talking about atmosphere and support and helping the team and all that kind of stuff, yeah, you want as many as possible. But I think the more you have, the more fans you have, the more safety risks that you have. So if you're saying I want the safety to come down, you bring the fans down as well. I think that's an obvious thing.
Or we just need more people to be doing their jobs properly, making sure there's fuller searches and better cordons and better stewarding and better policing to make sure that the safety element is addressed. I know it's not always going to be perfect. I appreciate that, but it needs to be better than it is.
I would agree with that.
I'll get back again to say that this season, players of the opposition taking corner kicks, people have thrown paper cups at them. Right. That's still going to happen. You know, so you'll never... That's why nutters are nutters. They'll always get in. And I think if you put 7,000 people either coming to Celtic Park or Ibrox, then you multiply the chances of the chances of something going wrong from a safety point of view. And I just think from a safety point of view, I know I'm repeating myself, just no fans. Away fans, sorry.
I'm going to link this in to the news that I was reading this morning in relation to alcohol at Celtic Park, but we'll talk a wee bit about the football before we go into that. And first of all, Fed Kukan Balls, nice avatar, Celtic says you. I remember when you brought that up, the first thing that comes to my mind is Robbie Coltrane and Cracker shouting it at Robert Carlyle, who was singing the Liverpool song. So we remember Robbie Carlyle, who died in 2022. Paddy Lavery, a great big afternoon from Ardoyne to all you lovely people. I'm looking forward to seeing you and the boys over for our gig in January. Do you think it's a good time to announce another guest, Acsom Live? Well, I love interviewing people. I love chatting to people. That's one of the reasons why I've been on just about all week this week. People will be sick of the sight of me. However, one of the things I love doing is interviewing people, particularly those with a Celtic state of mind. And one person I've never interviewed is a former manager of the club, and it's Martin O'Neill. And I would love to interview and get under his floorboards. So we're going to do it. We're going to do it on a live stage to an audience at Barra's Art and Design next month. So be quick, because this is going to sell out. It's at the end of February, and the ticket link is underneath the video. So that's the announcement. We've not mentioned it anywhere. It's not been mentioned on social media. Come and see us, an audience with Martin O'Neill. You will also have your opportunity to ask the great man questions. You can buy VIP tickets and meet him, get things signed, get your photograph taken, all that kind of stuff. This is something we're doing a lot more of in 2023, and Martin O'Neill is going to be one of the guests in February. What do you make of that, Natasha?
Oh, so excited for it. Can't wait to be along there for the night. Martin is obviously a manager who's very fondly remembered by the Celtic support. A great manager, a great person, and always someone who is so interesting to listen to. I try and catch as much of his content as I can in terms of interviews and media work that he does, because I think he's just fascinating to listen to. Every time I listen to him, I feel captivated by what he's saying. He's engaging, he's funny, he's charismatic. So an absolutely perfect guest to come on our live show, and I'm very much looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of our listeners there as well.
Oh, definitely. It's always good to actually see a face that has been appearing in the comment section. Jim, you go and get your delivery. There we go. Martin O'Neill, I hadn't even got the time, Natasha. I wasn't being rude. I hadn't even got the time to share this in the group, because we set it all up this morning. We just got the link and I was setting up the bulletin. I know that he has done quite a few engagements, let's say, both online as well as live and broadcast media. But we are going to talk about his Celtic career. We're going to talk about his entire football career. But what an interesting story he has. And yes, I'm going to have to speed read his autobiography as well in the next couple of weeks to make sure I don't miss out any of the interesting stuff. We're going to come back to some of the issues at the stadium.
Sorry.
That's all right. That's okay,
live.
Jim.
This is live.
It's live telly. Before we came on, Jim, I said to you guys, who do you reckon it's going to be? Natasha said Gordon Stratton. You said Martin O'Neill. Are you looking forward to it?
You may need a bigger boat for Martin O'Neill, possibly. I agree with all the things Natasha said. I've got his book, haven't actually read it yet, but yeah, he's a fascinating guy. He speaks really well, and I could listen to guys like him all night, because he's done so much in the game, managed teams either side of the border, been successful, had to manage big personalities. Yeah, he'll be a fascinating listen. Absolutely fascinating listen.
Here's a question for you then. JP brought up a really good point yesterday. We were in the discussion of Juranovic and Giakoumakis, and we were talking about that point when the honeymoon period is over with a manager and certain players start either agitating or they become restless and they're unsettled, Natasha, right? And although I threw in Julien as an example of somebody who might have been in that camp under Ange, JP quite rightly said to me, it was a legacy issue. Ange dealt with it, and that's the end of that. But the two players we've been talking about in relation to perhaps leaving Celtic, first team players leaving Celtic, are of course Juranovic and Giakoumakis. Now, we were going through all the different managers, and that moment, when that moment arose that all wasn't well in the camp. So we spoke about Tommy Burns, for example, and we said, you know, you had Van Hooijdonk and Di Canio, who became restless. We had the Ronnie Deila issue with some of the senior players, and Chris Commons obviously hurling abuse at the dugout on his way off the park. You had the Neil Lennon interview where he says there's guys in that dressing room who don't want to play for the club, don't want to be here. And of course, you had situations under Brendan Rodgers with guys like Moussa Dembele and Dedrick Boyata. But we hadn't really seen it with Ange. Did we actually see it with Martin O'Neill? Jim, I'll probably ask you that, because I know you were going home and away and going to Europe and all that stuff back then. Did you see it with Martin O'Neill? I don't think he ever lost any of the players in his team.
I was a different era, Paul, completely. I think we were paying big bucks, transfer fees, paying big bucks in wages to the Larsons and the Lennons and stuff like that, at a time where I'm not so sure if they went down south they'd earning any more money. So I think we're in a different place just now. I think there'd be players who... I think that team was so good and the players were so good, it was going to always be pretty difficult to get into that team. And I think the issues we have just now are a wee bit different. I think the Giakoumakis one, I've said this enough times on the podcast, that if I'm Giakoumakis, I think I should get more minutes on the park. I think I deserve more minutes. I'm not getting them. And there's a wee story during the week about, I think he's one of the lower paid players. Mm. So I'm not getting paid as much as all these other guys. Every time I'm called upon, I tend to do the business. I'm not getting game times. I'm hacked off, understandably so. Juranovic is different. Juranovic is a best right back in the World Cup, man of the match against Brazil. He's mixing with players like Luka Modric and the guy for Spurs, whose name I can't remember, who brought in silly money. You know, and I don't know how old he is, what, 27, 28?
Just turned
Juranovic.
28, yeah.
One big move left in him, and these guys are getting paid silly money. He's getting linked with Barcelona and stuff like that. So yeah, I think I can understand both of them. What always totally bemuses me is how most fans turn on people. And I mean, after the game on Monday, I haven't talked about Monday's game, but I mean, people on social media get rid of Juranovic. You're thinking madness, absolute madness. The guy's maybe not 100% fit, otherwise he would have started the other day. His head's in a different place. He's a quality player, and I can understand why we want to go. And I've also said in the podcast before, don't get too attached to players these days, because we're in a different world altogether. Both of those players will move on at some point. I'd like to keep them both, but I think we're not going to keep Juranovic because he can earn too much money elsewhere. I'm bemused by some of the fees that I mentioned for Giakoumakis, 6 million, 7 million pounds, which I think is totally madness. Where are you going to get another striker like him for 6 or 7 million if we have to replace the guy? Obviously, Ange knows better than us all. We'll just sit here on a podcast talking mince half the time. Ange knows what's happening back there. Giakoumakis isn't playing because Ange thinks he shouldn't be playing, and he knows why. So the amateur football fans like us are saying, or like me, is saying, well, why didn't he start on Monday and why didn't he come on after 60 minutes? Blah, blah, blah. But Ange, when I did bring him on, he kept on another striker and he scores a goal. What do you know? So Ange knows better than anyone how it's going to play out. We're on here giving our tuppence worth, and for my tuppence worth, I would like to keep them both. I think they'll move on, but they'll move on for completely different reasons. Juranovic can see the pound note signs, and Giakoumakis isn't getting a game. And I also said a number of times ago that Ange said it's not my job to keep players happy. Well, it is your job to keep players happy. How you keep them happy? There's a whole lot of different ways you can keep players happy. But there's two players who are not happy. I think Juranovic, I don't think there's much you can do about that because the pound signs are flashing. And if you're the best right back in the World Cup, you have to move. You really have to move. Giakoumakis, I think we should be paying him a bit more money, giving him more minutes. I think that would keep him a bit happier. And I like him. He gives us something different. So that's
he definitely does, Jim. I mean, it's an interesting point, Natasha, that Jim makes there, because obviously the monetary issue was an issue with a lot of the players I mentioned before. But really, in Martin O'Neill's time, that wasn't an issue because we were paying kind of Premiership wages. So point taken on that one. Giakoumakis, it seems more ambition to get more game time. Totally understand that. But, I'm of the view now that generally once you get to that point, you've got to move the players on because the dressing room might be affected. We've seen it with Lenny, we've seen it with Dial, with all the examples I've already given. Are you of the view that it is time for both players? Can you see maybe Giakoumakis salvaging his Celtic career? I'm kind of the view Juranovic is leaving. But I wouldn't like to see Giakoumakis go.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, actually. I think we always knew that it was highly likely that Juranovic would be leaving post-World Cup. You could tell when the rumours started circulating before the World Cup about his potential move, and that's definitely being fed from his camp to make sure that the eyes were on him during that spell in Qatar, and they very much would have been anyway given the level of his performances. He did absolutely fantastically, so that's only going to increase the interest in someone like Juranovic. Every player has a cycle at a club. We've talked about this before, and the model of our club is that we bring players in like we did with Juranovic, we develop them, we put them on a big stage, they put themselves on a big stage, and then they move on for an increased fee and we make some relatively good money on that, hopefully. I think that's what's going to happen with Juranovic, and we can't have any complaints about it. It's going to be a good move for the club. It's going to be a good move for the player. And that's just the way things work. It's our model. It's the cycle of a player, all these sorts of things. What we do need to make sure of, though, is that we get the right fee for Juranovic. We've got a brilliant asset there. We've got a good amount of interest in him. He's off the back of a fantastic World Cup against some big teams. He's got a good amount of time left in his contract. He's at a peak age for, playing. I know the sell-on fee then becomes a little bit more difficult at the age he's at, but this is exactly when we should be looking to capitalise on this asset. The figures that are being talked about a bit concerning. We're talking about teams like Chelsea and Barcelona being interested in this guy. So why figures of 6 and 7 million are floating, I'm not too sure. So we need to make sure that we're not shortchanged here. We need to make sure that we get the right value for him. And what I like most about this move in a way is that we've already got his replacement lined up. Alistair Johnston is already in the building. He's already made his debut, a very competent debut at that. So I like that we're not being reactive to a potential situation. Andrew's obviously seen the likely possibility that Juranovic is going to move on in this window and hasn't waited for that to happen to make sure his replacement is sitting there, not just sitting there on the pitch. So I'm happy about that. I think that's a good thing. So as long as we get the right money for Juranovic, I'm not too disappointed at moving him on at this stage of his Celtic career. Giakoumakis is a bit of a different one for me. Obviously, we have absolutely no idea what's going on behind the scenes, and any rumours of him being unsettled or unsettling a dressing room or anything like that could be completely unfounded. We just don't know. I'd like to see him get more game time. Again, like Jim's touched on as well, Ange is the one in the know here. Him, John Kennedy, Gavin Strachan, all they see him every single day in training. You know, we see this 90 minutes on the pitch, whether or not for Giakoumakis, obviously, but we see the time on the pitch, you know, on a match day. They see them every single day, and they're making the decision about how much game time they get on the basis of that. So there's obviously something there that is resulting in Giakoumakis not getting the game time that he thinks he deserves. Obviously, as fans, we'd probably like to see more of him as well, but there is a reason why we're not, and that's obviously something for Ange and his backroom team to make their decision on. Giakoumakis, I don't think that, you know, he is a bad player. I think he's a good player. I think he could be, you know, a real benefit to us over the course of the season that's still to come. Kyogo on his own is not enough, so we need to replace Giakoumakis. We probably could do with adding another striker to both of them. So losing Giakoumakis would probably create a bit of a headache in terms of you're then not only looking for one new striker, you're looking for two. So I'd like to see us keep Giakoumakis. I think he has more potential of staying. I think Juranovic is probably a relatively done deal to somewhere, but I'd like to see us hold on to Giakoumakis.
Yeah, even though...
I think also the fact, sorry, but then again, that I think before Ange came, I think what would tend to happen is we sell somebody and then we try and buy somebody else.
Yeah.
And we end up not buying somebody else. So if we're to lose Giakoumakis, we'd say, well, we need another kind of Giakoumakis type player. Well, let's just try and keep Giakoumakis because he's a Giakoumakis type player. And I think only time will tell. If Giakoumakis goes, we bring in somebody else who does as good a job as Giakoumakis, then well done, Ange. And I think our experience in the past is that tend to not happen. You tend to let somebody go, and you bring in somebody else, be it Albion or Yeti or something like that, and you're thinking, well, why didn't we try and keep the person we had before? I think what's different from the Neil Lennon season is that a lot of those players had checked out at the start of the season, and we kept them for a whole season. Mm-hmm. And that's another debate, which we'll maybe look at again at some point in time. I think that Juranovic and the Giakoumakis is fairly recently, you know, just started before the World Cup, a wee bit of talk about Juranovic, and maybe in the last few weeks of Giakoumakis. It's fairly recent, you know. Mm-hmm. And I think, as I said before, Juranovic is away. There's nothing we can do about that. Giakoumakis, unless he's done something that Angie said he's out, unless it's something like that, then you could always save the situation. You know, pay him a few more bob, give him, because we're definitely going to need players. There's going to be, you know, players out through injury or whatever. We're going to need somebody up front. He's there. He's good. He fits in with the team. Unless something's happened behind the scenes, as you were saying, Natasha, that we don't know about. And he's definitely, and that wee kind of egg timer thing that he put on the other week, you know, you're thinking, well, again, what's behind that? What's your thing? Is that something kind of daft thing you've done, or is there more to that? Or is he that smart that he's thinking, I'll stick an egg timer on here, like that'll ruffle people up, I'll get people. Is he that smart?
Or stupid. That's the last thing I'm just going to respond to.
And we're all thinking, hold on, let's have a think about this. An egg timer, let's have a think about this.
So we've had the Julien eyeballs, we've had the Giakoumakis egg timer. A couple of wee things there, Jim. You're spot on what you say, in that the last time we sold our first choice right back, it was Jeremy Frimpong. He was replaced with John Joe Kenny. Yeah. On loan, short-termism, no planning, you know. So things are different in relation to Juranovic. If he leaves, we've already done that planning. We've got your replacement in. I'm with Natasha on the centre-forward position, though. We lose Giakoumakis, and then you're trying to replace him. And it's a short window. And it looks as though some of the players, at least, that we've been interested in aren't done deals. So, you know, I'd much rather keep him and give him a few extra quid, as Jim says, because I think he is worth it. And yesterday I was saying, we've not seen him flying for a season. Imagine him being your top striker for a whole season. he would get you goals, and he does get you something different from Kyogo. Johnson, yeah, you mentioned Johnson coming in, making his debut against Rangers in the cauldron of Ibrox. Very impressed with that debut. What did you make of it overall, Natasha? I mean, he likes a challenge. He's up for the fight. Distribution very good at going forwards. One tiny wee blip, which I think will happen naturally with the positioning when Joe Hart hesitated and obviously had to savour bacon. But I think overall, very competent. And, that's probably one of the reasons why if Juranovic goes, it softens the blow. We know we've got him to back him up.
Absolutely agree. I've been impressed so far. I thought it was a really good debut, a solid debut for the most part. He was properly thrown in at the deep end and handled it really well. Both the game, the occasion, I thought he was really competent. So impressed in terms of that. Obviously, we've only seen him one game so far, but other aspects have impressed me too. I've liked his press conferences. I think he comes across confidently. I think he speaks well in terms of what he's saying. I think he's an intelligent player, and that comes across both on the pitch and in the press conferences. And I think from what we've seen so far, he's definitely got potential to be a fan favourite during his time here. I think his comments on VAR and the penalty decisions that may have went against us at Ibrox were really measured. And listening to him, I thought, you have summarised that really well, and I think you've dealt with it really well. I think you're already dealing with the media over here really well, so that's impressed me. So the fact that, a year ago, if someone had said, Juranovic is going to be off, you would be worried about it. I think the more that we see of Johnston, the more those concerns will be alleviated. So yeah, in terms of Johnston, impressed so far, look forward to seeing more of him, and I think we will now. Obviously, Ralston's still likely to be out, so I think Johnston will get another run in the team this weekend, tomorrow, and I think, I'm looking forward to seeing him. I think it'll do him good to get a few games under his belt and push on from there.
Yep, the games are coming in thick and fast. It's tomorrow before we face Kilmarnock. Jim, Johnson, I think, was one of the success stories on Monday. There was a few, I think, raised eyebrows at some of the selections for the starting 11. We came out unscathed. Do you think Ange got it right, the starting 11? Because, of course, in front of Johnson was Forrest, and a lot of people were surprised at that.
I thought there was a kind of Juranovic domino effect for me, I think. In that, if he was 100% fit, he plays, has to play. We had to play a right back because we were up against Kent, and Kent's their most effective offensive player. So it had to be right. So he couldn't play Hatate against Kent. He's going to play Juranovic if 100% fit. He's not. So he's on the bench, and we'll use him if we really have to, but we'll stick you on the bench just now. Ralston's still injured. Then Johnson has to come in. That's a kind of obvious one. He has to come in. If you play Johnson, then you need somebody who's going to track back and going to help him out. And you're playing at Ibrox as well, so somebody who's got a bit of experience as well. That's not Abada and that's not Jota. That's Forrest. Notwithstanding he didn't have a great game, but that's an obvious one. You have to play Forrest then. So the Juranovic domino gets you Johnson and gets you Forrest, I think.
Yeah.
Greg Taylor gets injured, unfortunately, because he's a fantastic season. Bernaby's the obvious choice. He's a left back. Why wouldn't you do that? Then you think, well, he's not much game time. He's a bit of a work in progress. I think offensively, he's looked really good. Defensively, I'm not so sure. And that's the main part of the pitch, down that right-hand side. James Tavernier, who's whips the ball, fantastic crossover ball, all the dangers will come down that wing as well. Do you want to put Bernaby on? Two inexperienced fullbacks? You've got Juranovic sitting in there, best right back in the World Cup, man of the match against Brazil, played at Ibrox before left back. You stick him on. He's a better bet. He doesn't have a great game, but how can you legislate for that? So I think that's the right call as well in terms of putting him on. And I think, I've said before in the podcast, one moment can change a game, one game can change a season. And Juranovic's one moment was their first goal, where we're on the attack. He's kind of pushing up. They get the ball back. I think it was it Ben Davis? Brilliant ball. Brilliant ball to Sakala. Takes a great touch. Juranovic is ahead of him because we're attacking. He's maybe out of position by a few yards. But even that I thought Juranovic back enough. He could have brought him down. He brings him down, takes a yellow card, they don't score. And in that moment, he doesn't bring him down. Sakala, good pass to Kent. Brilliant finish. outstanding finish from Kent. And at that moment, everything started to fall apart. And people are pointing at him saying he should never play again. He's a disgrace. One moment of just maybe pushed up because if you're in an Ange team, you're always looking to go forward. We've the ball over the back. I'm out of position, and that was a shame. And once they scored that goal, they get tons of confidence from that. But I think, to answer the question he asked, I think he picked the right team in the right circumstances. I might have played Giacomakis because of his physical strength. And up until they scored the goal, I was still convinced we should have started Giacomakis. And again, that shows what Ange's all about, because he takes off Rio Hatate, I thought was having a really good game, left Kyogo on, who did nothing, and he scores the goal. So that's why Ange knows far better than us. But in terms of answering the question, did they pick the right team? In the circumstances, I think that Juranovic domino effect meant that was the team to play.
Brilliantly illustrated, Jim Orr. Thank you very much for that, because I think it is easy to be lost in the emotions of it, particularly during the game and even in the post-match, which is why
that's the point I was making.
Post-match.
Exactly, but that's the point I was making. I mean, if you go on Twitter after the game, I mean, for most football fans, it's either black or white. He's brilliant, he's rubbish, he'd never play again. And on Twitter after the game, I mean, everyone got it. I mean, Hart got it. And all Hart did, he made one wee mistake. Because, I mean, if you're playing for Ange and you're a goalkeeper, the first thing you do is pass the ball out, try and pass the ball. So he was waiting to pass, and that didn't arrive. And he waits a split second too long. The guy shuts him down, and then he makes a great save. Fantastic save. But what that did was give their fans confidence and give their fans hope and give their players... And all of a sudden, everything went up because they thought they can be got at. Because up to that point, it was a walk in the park. It really was a walk in the park. We got the goal, we're knocking the ball about, we're looking pretty confident. And then when that happened, then people are blaming Joe Hart for one split second of a mistake. One split second, Hart out, we need a better goalkeeper. No, he was getting it. Starfelt was getting it. I mean, I've always said Starfelt's a good defender. Not that good with the ball at his feet, but first and foremost, he's a defender. And people say he's always got a mistake in him. Starfelt must play about, 80 passes in a game. Every game you put 80 passes, you might get one of them wrong. If you're Connor Goldson, you don't do that. You just punt the ball up the park. If you're Starfelt and you're playing 80 passes in a game, you know what? One or two might go astray. And if you're a right-footed player and you're playing the left side of defence, that makes it a bit more difficult. And he looks the most awkward guy in the world. But defending, I think he's a great defender. He threw himself in there. He kind of went to ground, as they say, in the box. And that's a dangerous thing to do. And that leads to the penalty. And at the time, I thought it's a stonewaller. And then you see it back, slow motion, you think, I'm not so sure that's a penalty after all. But apart from that, he's getting it as well. Starfelt's rubbish, get rid of rubbish. Hatate was getting it for some reason, and I thought he did a great game. O'Reilly wasn't too good, so he's to blame as well. Callum McGregor never shows up. James Forrest never. Kyogo, everyone's getting it. At the end of the day, they're players. They're no robots. They do the best they can, and I think also the kind of you mentioned Neil Lennon's season there. I mean, in that season, the word entitlement was getting mentioned quite a lot. Celtic fans are entitled. See if you get back a few weeks before the World Cup break, we were 2 points ahead. And I remember saying, see if we can get that to 4 before Ibrox. That'd be brilliant. Imagine going to Ibrox 4 points ahead. So we can lose the game and still be a point ahead. That would be brilliant. Imagine having that. And then they get into a bit of a kind of dodgy pattern and drop 7 points. So we're 9 points ahead going to Ibrox. And we've got a goal difference of 17 better than them. And we can lose and we don't really care. But everyone's getting slaughtered. And as you said, but we come out of Ibrox, we didn't play well. All these players are getting slaughtered. We didn't play well, didn't do very much. Gave them a goal up, there's no long to go, and we walk out of there completely unscathed. Apart from the fans, the team walks out of there completely unscathed, 9 points ahead, and everyone's getting slaughtered. I think at times we have to kind of calm down a wee bit and just see where we are. Players are going to have bad games. We play a lot of games. Maybe it's time for different players to have a game. Fine. But the reality is, as long as we take care of the other teams in the league, we can lose the next 2 Glasgow derbies, it doesn't matter. That's where we are just now. And it doesn't have to always be perfect. 9 points ahead. Fantastic.
Jim, you should have given us that as a pre-recording, and I would have played it at full time just to keep everybody's nerves settled, right? But you mentioned one thing, and I'm bringing it up. You mentioned the Reo Hatate. I'm a massive fan, absolute huge fan of Hatate. I was asked at the beginning of the season to name the player who's going to have a breakthrough season, and I said he's going to be the player of the year. Quite bold, maybe, but he came back. His conditioning has been phenomenal. And I've got to mention this because social media pile-ons are still a thing, Natasha, it would appear. And all I would say is, agree, disagree, whatever, doesn't really matter. Let's just remember that the people on the end of the abuse are human beings, and it does affect people, you know. And what you see with regards to the pile-on from our own fans, it's no nice to see, is it, Natasha? I mean, listen, the Reo Hatate comments, I'll say it, totally disagree with you guys. Alan's on a Friday, every other Friday. Love it, my bits, but I totally disagree with that. However, let's not pile on. Let's not bully people online because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Alan was given an opinion on Reo Hatate based on the stats that he pulls together. Now, Alan's stats are absolutely incredible. The way he manages to pull figures out often goes over my head, but I always find it very insightful, very interesting, and it's just a totally different way than to which I watch the game. And I think that is the case for a lot of people. Some of us watch it and analyse what we see in front of us, and some of us watch it with the assistance of the stats like Alan does and what he's able to pull together. And I'm always really interested when he does that. He's given an opinion on a player based on what he's managed to pull together. Do I agree with it from what I've watched? Probably not. But his stats are based on facts, so it's interesting to listen to. And I think it's always interesting to push your own boundaries and test your own opinions by listening to those of others. The last thing you should then be having is people attacking him for his opinion. Say it's wrong. Say you disagree with it. Tell him why you disagree with it. But leave it at that, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
You kind of, I love the stats, love Alan Morrison, because as you said there's a football phrase, to play the ball, not the man. Basically. And that's what people do. Oh, that's what people don't do. They don't play the ball, they play the man. That's a bit sexist, sorry, but or the woman. Because somebody makes a point. If you don't like the point, that's the ball. Attack the ball. Don't like the person don't attack the person who made the point. And I don't mind people saying this guy's talking, that old guy's talking rubbish. I don't mind that at all. But when they attack me for me, there was a YouTube comment last week with some utter nutter. And if you're watching, you're an utter nutter. I don't argue with nutters, you know, because it's all about the points that you make. And I think because I saw it in the Acsom chat, I thought I better nip into Twitter to see what's happening here with this ridiculous pile-on. And all Alan was doing was, here's the stats, and the stats are telling you this, right? And that's objective, you know, and you can't argue with that. And you say, well, based on the stats, this is where we are. And I think an interesting thing to do is because back in the day, being old, we didn't have stats. Or we had very basic stats. In Lisbon, with 42 shots a goal. You know, with very, very basic stats, right? But who was the greatest ever Celtic player? Jimmy Johnson, right? I would love people to look at his stats, right? Because one of the biggest failings of Jimmy Johnson was his final ball, right? He could beat 5 players, go out and beat them all again. You know, his crossing wasn't that great, you know. And I think if they were to run the rule over Jimmy Johnson, you might find a similar outcome to the Hatate one. And I think there's a phrase Alan used about, was it the good moments or the good things via the bad? There's lots of good things, but there's lots of bad things. Jimmy Johnson, lots of brilliant things, but loads of bad things as well. Did Jimmy Johnson track back, tackle people, blah, 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 blah? So I think if you ran the rule over Jimmy Johnson, the stats might tell you something different to what you're watching. But what you're watching is this fantastic player. Yeah. And the Hatate one, where in Monday, he had the ball in the corner flag and a wee trick, and he was running along the byline. That's what you see. That's what you pay money to go and see football. Mm-hmm. That's what you love. You're not paying to watch Hatate tracking back. He's pinging 50 yards passes. He's taking a ball with 4 guys round him. He's turning. Maybe he doesn't track back. Maybe he doesn't do all the things that we'd like him to do. And that scores him poorly on the stats. But that's just purely stats. You'd much rather go and watch a Reo Hatate than a James McCarthy, say. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure, I don't mean in disrespect to James McCarthy, but maybe James McCarthy's stats are a lot better than Reo Hatate's. And maybe that helps the team more, because at the end of the day, that's what the stats are all about. But I agree with you, Paul. I think Hatate's been our best player and most consistent player this season, and the best player to watch. And football's all about goals and making goals. He makes goals and he scores goals. And that's what you go to see. And I think what he did that Starfelt didn't do, and it's getting back to this idea of the first thing that happens, you make your mind up. Carl Starfelt signed on the Friday, played against Hearts on the Saturday, wasn't very good. He's rubbish. Hatate comes in, scores a screaming at Tynecastle, scores 2 in the Glasgow Derby. He's brilliant. The answer is no, that simple. It's somewhere in the middle. And all Alan is doing, and all the stats guys are doing, saying the stats say this, and you can't argue with the stats. You can argue with Natasha Miko or Paul Jones or Jim Orr, you can argue them to the council of home. You can't argue with stats. It's objective. We're all subjective. So have a pop as much as you want, but you can't argue with the stats.
Yeah. And even if you do disagree, let's be nice about it. We're all Celtic fans. We all have a Celtic state of mind after all. The underwater cabbage salesman is watching this whilst on holiday in Cork. I hope you have a fantastic time. And the weather is good for you as well, because it's blowing a gale, as you would say, through here in Dalkeith. Pete McGee, the February Derby game at home proved that the atmosphere is better without the toxicity of their fans. Time to refuse them tickets and decline away tickets for Ibrox for our fans' safety. Now, we're talking about fans. We're talking about the stadium experience, how things have changed. I read with interest, Natasha, that there is going to be a wee change this weekend against Kilmarnock, because alcohol will be available at Celtic Park. Bevy has been banned since 1980. My old fellow was at that game. He lost a shoe, but it was nothing to do with taking it off to wave it at the opposition. Celtic will be selling alcohol in the West Stand concourse from 11 to 1. I think it's a great step. I really do, because there's so many reasons for that. Firstly, this isn't good for the pubs in and around Celtic Park, but it's generating cash for the club. If you want to just think about the club for a second, it's generating money for the club. But it's a step closer to allowing fans to behave like adults and drink responsibly within the grounds. I don't think you can drink responsibly if you're getting bevied for a 12 or 12:30 kickoff, Natasha, and you're trying to get a carry-out consumed before you get in the ground, and if you don't, then you'll smuggle it in. I think there's a right knock-on effect, bizarrely enough, to not allowing drink in football grounds in Scotland.
I agree. I think it's a good step. I'm glad the club are doing it. I think it's a step towards treating football fans like you treat any other attendee of a big event in Scotland. Like we've talked on before when we've touched the subject, you can go to a concert and drink at a concert. You can go to a rugby game. You can probably go to almost any other sporting or entertainment event and be able to buy a drink at the stadium that's hosting that event, unless you're a football fan. So for me, it's more of a step forward in terms of treating football fans like we treat other civilians in the country, and not treating them with disrespect like has been seen previously. I don't think it's going to create a great issue. I think, you think about it, you can get alcohol inside Celtic Park if you pay enough in your season ticket that allows you to do that. The corporate boxes all have alcohol available, the lounges have bars. So why have we created a system whereby if you pay enough, then yes, it's acceptable to drink in a football stadium. But if you don't pay enough, then no, you can't drink in a football stadium. I mean, that's a ridiculous situation to have created in itself. So it's a positive step forward that we are doing this. We're starting to treat football fans properly again. And I think it'll only add to the whole event of going to a game with your family and your friends, and allow people the choice of being able to do that if they want to.
I had this idea.
That'll add to the match day experience.
Yeah, you had the opportunity, Natasha. Remember Dominic Mackay? 72 days?
I remember his speech then, yes.
Well, you were there. You were there when he arrived and you got a chance to speak to him. And we were all talking at the time, this is a guy from rugby. Maybe he will try and implement some new rules at the football. By the way, I wouldn't drink at the football because I drive to the games anyway, or I'm in here in the studio. But I'm just saying, I think it would be good for the club. And I think it would actually, there'd be a secondary element of this issue that we have with smuggling drink into the ground. Jim, you look at the fact, Natasha made the point there, you go to hospitality, you can have a bevy. If you can't afford hospitality and you can only afford the cheap seats, you can't. It's like a class war. You're not rich enough to be able to drink at the football. So at the moment, there are many, many issues with this. What do you reckon about alcohol at Celtic Park tomorrow? Are you for or against it?
I think this is a whole podcast in its own right. I think without trying to stand in my soapbox, alcohol's the curse of Scotland, basically. The fascination with alcohol, the fascination that you have to get bevied up before you go to the match. I was at the 80 Cup final, just thinking I was 21 at the 80 Cup final. I didn't go in the park because many things, but I'm not a nutter, and nutters are nutters. And 1980 happened because we won the cup, and the opposition fans, the nutters in the opposition fans didn't like it, so they ran on the park, and then our nutters ran on the park as well, and they all kind of engaged with each other. And that was about nutters being nutters again, not to do with alcohol, but back in the day, you could bring 24 cans into the game, and you could lob full cans down the terrace, and so that was looking at the tagline, that was a safety fear, basically. So maybe not letting people take drink into the games. Get that, totally get that. But I don't drink, as you may have gathered there, and I don't get the fascination with it. I get the idea that it's unfair that football fans should be treated differently to rugby fans or cricket fans or whatever. And it's a money-making exercise. So why should the kind of local pubs make money when it's actual Celtic fans? I get the idea. If people want to leisurely drink before the game, a pint or a couple of pints, fine. That's absolutely okay. People getting tanked up before the game, people who feel they have to drink, not for me, basically. And I just think the thing about rich fans, I mean, that in itself is a nonsense. Again, either you ban all alcohol from the inside the stadium or you don't. It's either one or t'other. The point you said that you're not rich enough to be able to get alcohol. See, if you're rich enough, you can have alcohol. That's just nonsense to start off with. Right. Yep. And you can get bevied as much as you want because that's just, if you're a nutter and you're rich, you can drink as much as you want. It's okay. It's fine. You can be sick anywhere you want. It's absolutely fine. 1980 was a different time. There was an overreaction to that back at the time. At the time, I felt this is an overreaction to that, but you can't have people coming. I mean, people would wander into games with like 224 cans and stand on top of them and stuff like that. And they were chucking cans at their own fans, because for your younger listeners there, the East, I mean, I'm thinking back to Hampden Park. I think it was like, you could get 40,000 in the Celtic end at Hampden Park, and it went back for miles. So somebody chucking cans down was hitting loads of different people, whatever. So that wasn't a good thing. So stop. Maybe you're over the tops and you can't drink alcohol at games. What was the question? Is it a good thing tomorrow? As long as people are sensible, yeah. But I find it bizarre. It's not something like we'll open at 11, but we'll shut at 1.
We've got a wee gap between.
Because we don't trust you. We really don't trust you because we keep this open. Something's going to happen here, and that in itself tells a wee story, I think. But I think, I mean, I've jumped massive topic, and obviously fans going to games. I mean, I don't go to away games. Natasha goes all the time. People travelling supporters bus, feel reflection in society.
People should be given a choice at a football game as a step in the right direction. Kaiser comes in. Welcome back. You're watching on YouTube. Varied opinions and debate. Remember, especially on social media, 10 people turns into 100 people. Next thing you've got a pile on, and people today. Gary Melrose. It's very difficult to disagree with statistics. Yes, it is. But I think the Jimmy Johnston example is tremendous from Jim. And if you were to look at his defensive capabilities, he probably wouldn't score that high. Don't attack the people, reminds Stephen Coulthard. Absolutely. Stephen, I hope you're all enjoying the show. 800 strong, almost over 900 now. Thank you all for tuning in. I said about 5 minutes in that we had a big announcement. The big announcement is that I am delighted to announce that I'll be joined on stage by Martin O'Neill. And at the end of February at Barra's Art and Design. The ticket link is underneath the video. I know things are tight and things are hard for most people out there at this moment in time, but we are doing live events. We're trying to keep the tickets as affordable as possible because there's obviously a lot of overheads on putting this out. But it would be great to see you there. So I'm pretty sure the tickets will go pretty quickly. I am not going to go through a whole hour, Natasha Miko, without talking about the goals in handball. Right, I've made my feelings pretty clear on it, but I haven't heard your feelings or Jim's. Penalty all day long, as far as I'm concerned. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. You, as a defender, put your hands into that position in the box and the ball hits them. That's a penalty, as far as I am aware. If the handball rule has changed for what seems like the 100th time this season, then someone can enlighten me on that. But for me, watching football, that is a penalty all day, every day. I really liked what Alistair Johnson had to say on it, that yes, it was one moment that went against us in a football game, and there are lots of moments that we were in control of during that football game that we could have done better, that would have impacted the result, and that was just one of them. But it was one of them. I think it probably did impact the result. And I'm just pretty sick of coming on after most games and talking about VAR or bad decision has done nothing to alleviate any concern, asking for explanations, because either my understanding of what a handball is completely off, or that was another handball that's been...
Why it wasn't a handball.
In the context of the season, because I'm thinking, as I said, they're 9 points clear, it should be okay. If we don't win the league, that's the point. Maybe it was after about 60 minutes. Momentum shifts. I don't understand the rules these days. As Natasha says, they seem to be changing every 2 minutes. I read something about if you put your hand up to protect your face, you become this soft. If you're a defender, you put any part of your body in front of the ball to try and stop the goal. His hands are above his head. He puts his hands towards the ball. If that's not a penalty, one of my bugbears on that rule, because it just causes so much contention. Mm-hmm. And what you always tend to find is the punishment 90% of the time is more than the crime. Right? You get a free shot to goal for 12 yards. Right? And a lot of these penalties that are given, somebody's hit the ball with their hand on the byline, or somebody's tackled somebody at the edge of the box and there's like 20 people inside the box. They're never going to score a goal. So I hate the penalty kick. I'll just give it as a foul. And you also get the phrase people say to you, anybody else in the park, that's a foul. Well, this is anybody else in the park. It's just there's a big box around it. So it is a penalty kick. It must be a penalty kick. And the thing VAR's doing my head in now. And I never thought VAR would be like this. I thought it wouldn't be VAR, it would be VA. Right? The referee would have video assistance.
Yeah.
So, and what you tend to find, and also the fact, I have refereed kids' game, boys' clubs games, up to under 19. Ref doesn't show up, you're on, I'm going to go and referee the game. And if you're refereeing the game, it's a difficult thing. It's dead easy to sit back. That linesman should have got that. It's really difficult. Things move quite quickly. But what you do know, and what referees know, is sometimes, I gave that decision, I'm not sure about that. I'd like to have another look at that, but I can't. Mm-hmm. Because now the technology is there. If I was John Beaton on Sunday, and if I was a normal referee on Sunday, and I was standing where he was standing, I think there might have been a Rangers player between him and Goldson. So I'm not sure if he actually seen it as clearly as he could have. But all the Celtic players put their hands up. So if I'm John Beaton and that happens, I'd be thinking to myself, I never saw that. I'd love to have some video assistance. Hey, I've got video assistance. Stop the game, guys. Go to the tunnel, look at the monitor, play it back, and have the technology to do that. Because, 25 years ago, this is like science fiction. Imagine stopping the game and going over to the side and be able to stop the game and slow it down to absolutely nothing. Imagine being able to do that. Well, no, you can't. You can't do that. Don't have somebody else in the studio telling you stuff. You know yourself. You know what? I'm not 100% sure. Stop the game. I'm going to over here, guys. I'm not going to stand in the centre of the park, everyone booing me. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to look at this monitor and I can slow it right down. I got it right. I got it wrong. And that's, to me, what VA should be. Video assistance for the referee, not a video assistant referee, because he's got a different opinion to you. What was the question? Goldson, sorry, all day long and twice on Sunday. And I think if we don't win the league, that's a big moment. That's a huge moment in the season. Huge moment.
I hope we don't have to come back to this point that you've said that, Jim, but you're right. You're spot on. I've really enjoyed that. It's a different lineup on a Friday. We've got quite a few of the regulars joining us tomorrow for the game against Kilmarnock. So we'll have our pre-match. We'll talk about the lineup and everything else tomorrow at the usual time. Someone was complaining that we were 30 seconds late before we started today. I'm very sorry. Sometimes you get involved in a wee pre-match chat, and that's exactly what happened this afternoon. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. You continue to support the Celtic State of Mind. If you want to come and see us live, the tickets are available now. The link is under the video. Come and see us interviewing Martin O'Neill. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. All that's left for me